Welcome to excuse me. Yeah, welcome to another edition of the Willie Bragg Show. Good evening to every one of you. Today, we have an unexpected surprise. Justin Addeo is here to join us. We're here to have a chat, a nice ideological chat about things going on with the American left and where we're headed and what we can do to make the left more proactive to get the things we need to do to make our country and to make the world a better place. So, Justin, I'm gonna let you introduce yourself.
Well, hi, I'm Justin Addeo, uh, or Adeo, whichever. It doesn't matter to me. um, and I don't know. What am I? I guess just here to talk about, the state of the left.
That's what I do all the time on this show. So, it's kind of like just a pastime for me these days. And I guess that's what we'll do. So let's get started. All the rage right now. There's this whole hashtag MAGA communism movement, and it's been getting a lot of reactions from a lot of folks.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I remember seeing like long before any of the hashtag MAGA communism. I remember seeing like sort of I guess you could say memes parodying like like a parody meme of like of certain elements within Trump's you know like uh you know guess cabinet or whatever, like what's his name, the guy that he kicked out, what's his name, the oh gosh, the one who said outright that he's like Lenin because he wants to crush the
Bannon,
state. What?
Steve Bannon.
Yeah, Bannon, that's it, Bannon. So I mean, this goes back a while. This isn't just like all of a sudden something new. Like there, I you know I don't, it's funny because uh I see it very much along the same way that I guess you could say the far right often appropriates things on the far left, because the for one thing, the far left is more popular than the far right in many levels because it appeals to the broad masses, you know the um, the working class, and I mean, you see this going all the way back to movements in the 30s with like with Mussolini and Hitler and what have you, like the way of course the NDSAP, the National German Workers Party and all that, Socialist Workers Party, um, and how Mussolini very much started out as a socialist. In fact, a lot of people don't know that. So a lot of ways, the people on the right are opportunistic when it comes to appropriating things from the left for their own purposes. And I kind of see this with MAGA communism or what have you. It's just seems like old school to me. It's just another form of like the far right, taking from the left, the way they have. I mean, like you see with fascistic movements, obviously in Germany and Italy being the most prototypical, but also in obviously Japan, Spain, Portugal, other places like that. Um, they they take like these the whole idea of like the masses and a one party state and this kind of populist fervor, things like that. because when you come down to it, I think it's something I remember Noam Chomsky once saying. It's like, of course, the far right plays into these cultural issues because you can't just say, well, I'm here to like stomp on your neck. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have to like kind of dress it up a little bit. You can't just like say like so you have to kind of like appeal to like a kind of cultural populism, to things that appeal to the masses, as and of course the left is based on that. The left is based on the idea of egalitarianism and the you know the uplifting of the working class into the political arena so that it has the ability to has the leverage against capitalism and against corporate interests. And um and I guess that, interestingly enough, I think about it like as someone who was a part of the anti-globalization, or maybe I usually like to call it the counter-globalization, because I'm not opposed to like the global coming together of movements and stuff like that. But my thing was always against what I guess Lenin would call international finance capital, or global neoliberalism, the globalization of corporate power and transnational. I've always been against that, but not against, obviously I've always, as a communist myself, I'm in favor of proletarian internationalism, like a globalization from the bottom up. But what I noticed is back in the anti-globalization movement or counter-globalization movement in the late '90s, early 2000s. For instance, during the World Trade Organization meetings, demonstrations, which were massive, and I don't think these days they get as much play as they used to. Like, people have generally forgotten about them in the aftermath of things like Occupy Wall Street and now BLM movement and all that stuff. But back then, you had people, it was a broad coalition, and you already saw people on the far right, very small faction, but some people on the far right who are already taking advantage of this of anti-globalization rhetoric, like Pat Buchanan, for instance. He was marching in the street right next to Ralph Nader, you know who also has a kind of broadly protectionist, like national protectionist. I wouldn't, he's not right wing, but they share a certain common ground with the idea of protecting U.S.
Kind of like
citizens.
overlap. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some overlap there, but at any rate, the point being is that at one time, at least, the anti-globalization movement was almost purely on the left, except for a few opportunists. And you saw thousands upon thousands of people coming out into the streets to protest the World Trade Organization, the IMF and World Bank. It was just phenomenal at one time, and then it was all kind of shipwrecked on the post 9/11. And it all shifted to the anti-war movement, basically, from anti-globalization to anti-war movement. So the left was no longer as focused on opposing corporate globalization with an international, like a kind of globalization from the grassroots, from like a working class or peasants from around the world, and that sort of thing was what the anti-globalization on the left was. It was definitely more of it was an international movement of a working class movement, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that the right went from just being like, say, Pat Buchanan picking up the banner of anti-globalization, skip forward over, say, like the whole neocon thing with the Bushes, and with George Bush, and all that, Dick Cheney and all that. Skip forward to MAGA, the whole MAGA thing with like Trump, you all of a sudden seen these anti-globalization rhetoric coming back, but in a right-wing form. It was no longer on the left wing, which was all about uniting all the different, multitude of disenfranchised around the world, small farmers, peasants, workers who were displaced from outsourcing, uh, like sweatshops. I remember one time was the big thing was like Nike and everything and sweatshops and all that. All of a sudden, it just got repackaged by the right to be like to mean like nationalism. You know what I mean? Because the rhetoric has changed from yes, we're against globalists, kind of a very vague term that could mean anything from like like a Jew-spiracy, like Jewish conspiracy to like like vaguely like liberals, like jet setting liberals or whatever. How the right, like finds scapegoats that aren't really what the problem is. But at any rate, the point being is that the right has definitely now like repackaged anti-globalization in a way that it wasn't decades ago. Like at the end of the 90s, the beginning of the millennium, the left was completely the ones who were like like it was the first after the fall of the Soviet Union, which was always kind of a blockade against Western expansionism and Western capitalism. Once that fell, neoliberalism took over. This whole idea of opening up borders for capital, right, and for not just for capital, but mainly for capital. The idea was that now it's the end of history, as Fukuyama talked about and all. We no longer have any more. It's the Hegelian end of history. We've overcome the dichotomy between capitalism and communism, because communism lost. We're paying off. The Chinese are embracing corporate sponsors and blah blah blah. So when at one time there was this idea that now the new way to go, and the right and the left, by left I mean like liberals in terms of like the new Democratic Party under Clinton and what have you, we're all kind of agreeing on this, that now that communism is out of the way, we just need a kind of a public-private partnership between capital, like corporate capitalism and the government, and I believe it was Clinton, said the era of big government is over and all that stuff, and that's their internationality, I guess, was the idea of, like that I'm sorry, but that's their idea of it that this new world where corporate capitalism was now like going to be more progressive, like everyone out there has a commercial slot for them, the gays, the blacks, everyone is like can be co-opted into this system, into this kind of like progressive capitalism that is global, and
Rainbow capitalism.
yeah, exactly. It's like, but the thing is like the left did finally clap back. If you're the real left, the socialistic, anarchistic, uh, anti-capitalist left clap back at the end of the and it was happening all over the world. Not the U.S. was always like the last on board with it, but the anti-globalization movement was happening all throughout the 90s, and even in the there were IMF riots even in the 80s and stuff like that, all over the world and stuff like that. But as I was saying before, was that the right now, a couple of decades later, after the rise and fall of the neocons and everything like that, and Project for the New American Century, the MAGA, like end of the right, the political right in the GOP started repackaging anti-globalization, but in a way that was severely reactionary. It wasn't about like working class people uniting across borders to fight back against corporate control. And now it's just basically the idea of we've got to close the borders, like closing the borders, focusing on ourselves here in the U.S. These like I said, very almost thinly veiled anti-Semitism going around, like the idea that that there's these kind of international conspiracy against you know uh, good old fashioned American values and national business. And it was beginning to sound very much like the 30s under, honestly, with MAGA and stuff like that. Because once again, it kind of like, the far right of that ilk is very good at repackaging leftist rhetoric for its own reactionary agenda. And that's what I see MAGA communism basically as. And it's like, of course, a lot, this is why, liberals start thinking like, oh, well, maybe they're in line with like the Russians and stuff. Because, the Russians also have that kind of right-wing populism under Putin, with, Dugin and whatnot, and National Bolshevism and blah, blah, blah. But like, I mean, I personally think a lot of that was just hype and like xenophobic hype. But like, but to a certain extent, it does sort of parallel a lot of other movements, a lot of other post-communist right-wing populist movements are very much along the same, similar to MAGA, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I see it. But I'm sorry, I've been going on. If there's anything you have to like jump in on.
No. You packed a lot of useful information. I've been writing some notes on what you just said, and yeah, I mean, and it, like you said, kind of started. I remember the reference Stephen Bannon made about Leninism. And on the way, I would drive on the way to work or go to the gym in the morning, and I'll listen to right wing talk radio just to hear what the other side have to say in 2016. And this is before Glenn Beck became MAGA. He was a typical neocon for Ted Cruz, who I will argue is probably worse in some ways than Trump. And he was like doing the fear mongering about Steve Bannon using the term Leninism and things like that. But with regard to the contradictory style and rhetoric of the populist right, I mean, they don't want to, when they mean populist right, when they talk about free speech, and big tech, going after big tech, they want cancel culture imposed on the left. Yeah. They want to bust unions. They don't support any minimum wage. They don't even support a public option, let alone, I mean, and they're different from even the populist right in other countries. And they're going to be bad news everywhere, but at least since they have national health care and some semblance of a welfare state, they're a little more okay with it over there than they would be with it over here. And that's a difference. But with the Donald Trump movement, he sounded like a populist in 2016, but that populism was gone in 2020 when he sounded like an angry Mitt Romney in 2020, whereas in 2016 he was almost trying to sound like a right-wing Bernie Sanders, almost.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's very true. And you go even further back with Trump. Before he was a Democrat, before he was a Republican, and at one time he did like say that we should have universal health care and stuff like that. I mean, the thing is that Trump is like a lot of these kind of like right.
He's a grifter.
Yeah, I mean, they're pragmatic. It's very. it's the same thing with, like I was saying, with for like with Mussolini or Hitler or whatnot, or I know those are way more extreme than, obviously. I don't want to, like, like go along with the whole thing. Well, he's a new Hitler or whatever, but because you overuse that and no one believes you anymore. It's like the boy who cried wolf. But but just saying, in that general trend of right wing populism, a lot of it's just very, like, kind of a patchwork. It's very much like just taking a little bit from here, a little bit from there. One day it will be about, like, appropriating social democratic rhetoric. The next day they'll talk about privatization. There's no real, like, ideological backbone to it, except this kind of militant nationalism. That's about it. But when it comes to economically or what have you, it's all just what they think is good at the moment. You know what I mean? There's no real principle behind it, is what I'm trying to say. It's sometimes it will sound very left and sometimes it will sound very right. It just depends on what they feel is practical for them at the moment.
It makes things kind of tough on the real left, as opposed to the what I call the shit libs out there that just are just kind of just tribalistic. And because I mean, I am so beyond red team versus blue team and all that. I mean, I do think that the red team still is worse than the blue team in many ways, but at the same time, it's like a two-front war. You have to fight with these shit libs, and then you have to fight with the real right, because the country is so far to the right in its Overton window that what passed for the left is mildly to the right of Boris Johnson's Conservative Party in the UK.
Well, see, this is where I'm just gonna, like, change directions a little bit here, because I have been, like, going off on the right and everything like that, because I do feel like they are the greater threat. However, just because they have more fervor than the liberal end of the spectrum, and more of an ability to garner, at least temporarily, a mass movement. But I, in as much as I can go on a long time about how, like, about the kind of existential threat of right wing populist politics, it has to be said that the liberal centrism is directly responsible for this. And the fact that, and this, just to go back to the 90s once again, the way that the Democratic Party was completely taken away from any kind of New Deal populism by the Clintonite, centrists and what have you. They no longer really had an appeal to working class people, only a very symbolic one, mostly just a symbolic one.
Historically.
Yeah. And honestly and symbolically, they had they kind of shifted to, like, cultural issues, I guess you could say. But even that, they weren't really, like, pushing it strong. It was still very much the whole don't ask, don't tell thing under Clinton, and then later, gay marriage and everything like that. And all very good, like with gay marriage. I'm not against it or anything like that, but still fairly conservative in its orientation about gay rights, because you shouldn't have to get married to get like health care. You should be able to just be entitled to health care, as a citizen. You shouldn't have to, like, be like, oh, I'm going to get married so that I can have health care, because that's no way to base a marriage, as far as I'm concerned on. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that liberals really did it to themselves when they started saying things like, well, I'm socially liberal but fiscally conservative, because that, the thing is, the right will just jump on that and tear that shit to shreds because it's so disingenuous. It's just because, like, look, the fact of the matter is, you might be. That's that. All that says to me is that you have as many rights as you can afford. You have as many human rights, you have as many civil rights as you can afford. Sure, I'm fine with you being gay or of a different color or what have you, as long as you're in like the bourgeois class. You know what I mean? As long as you have, as long as you can assimilate into the upper middle class, and and that, and the right will definitely jump. I remember, what was it like? What was it under Bush Senior? Dan Quayle called them the cultural elites. That's a very right wing populist kind of like thing. It's just, people do not, like the right will definitely exploit this kind of snobbery or elitism that's within, the liberal ranks, especially when they shifted from any kind of semblance of New Deal populism, to just being about like just being Reaganism with a moderately progressive cultural, veneer to it. Just like Reaganism, but without the overt homophobia, I guess you could say. You know, so like the overt homophobia or overt racism or what have you.
I know
Um,
what you mean. It's basically the Reagan Revolution without the religious right, but with
yes,
the Denley Bell symbolic woke platitudes.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And the thing is, if you don't have a organized left wing that will take that to task, the right wing will just jump right on it and exploit that weakness because it is weak. It's weak.
very.
It's weak, and it will just make the right stronger. And let's put it this way: if you're going to be on the same kind of let's take apart the welfare state, let's, like the whole personal responsibility act under Clinton and all that, like with welfare to workfare. If you're going to do that, if you're going to take it apart, the fact of the matter is, and not put anything in place, the right, like far right nuts, and will come in into that vacuum. They'll definitely will, and like with charities and stuff like that, and just like have like private, like because there'll be poor people, and if they're not getting it for, something from the government, they'll get it from private, sources, and a lot of those are, are like Christian fundamentalists, you know what I mean, and other sort of like, like far right, like movements and stuff. They'll just fill that vacuum, and they'll just say, and they'll start, it's just easier to propagate amongst working class and poor people this sort of look at the ones who are really oppressing you. It's all those like country club snobs on the liberals who are like, who they're privileged enough that they can have their token gays and blacks, but they're gonna leave the white working class people out to dry. It's like, you're gonna be like, your job's going to be taken over by like foreigners who are all nannies in their like McMansions and stuff like that. You get the idea. They use this all the time, that like the liberals are like these rich, limousine liberals are just like, they have all the privilege not to have to deal with racial conflicts, with or even have to like pay, their, they're like kind of aristocrats that have their like, paternalistic like 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 entourage of their multicultural entourage that they're like, that they're, and then, of course they're mainly white people anyway. So of course you can say they can put, you know, point out
Everything's your
that.
target.
Yeah, they're always their target. Because you just say, well, they're hypocrites. They're absolute hypocrites. And then like, and that's the thing about it, is that the left used to be about taking them to task about that. You look in the '60s, and of course you have like Phil Oakes's, "Love Me, I'm a Liberal," that song, and it's all about that. Like about and I love Puerto Rican heroes as long as they don't live, move in next door, sort of thing, in that, and the right will also just pounce on the hypocrisy of these kind of like, so-called limousine liberals who like, have all this sort of, like class privilege, not to be like, say, like talking down to like your average redneck, about how they're so racist. Meanwhile, they live in an area code that doesn't see like a person of color except when they come in to clean their houses. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Or so like, yeah, it's definitely the right will. So in as much as, of course, I see the main threat as the populist right. It, the idea that like the liberal center is somehow like blameless in this is ridiculous. And everyone who thinks that like, oh, like the left wing of the Democratic Party was responsible for Hillary Clinton losing are delusional. Okay, absolutely delusional. She had no, like, she skipped, it was like she went out of her way to alienate working class people. Like
She sure
like
did.
she literally went out of her way to. So who do you think's gonna like come in and take the thing? Like, yeah, of course, the main constituents. Let's not be like, let's not look at this like completely the wrong way here. The fact of the matter is like, I know, like, in as much as like the MAGA movement tried to make themselves as to be like, oh, we're for like the average working class, like redneck white person or whatever. I mean, come on, the guy's a billionaire, first of all,
I
and
always said that. Yeah.
yeah, first of all, he's a billionaire. Secondly, most of his constituency are upper middle class, petty bourgeois types. And, those were the types that rose up during the January 6th. You look at it. Most of them did not have the time or money to leave their job to go to the Capitol. Most of these people had private jets because they're like middle tier business people. You know what I mean? The kind that want to become the 1%, corporate elite, but they're just not at this point, and that's why they latch on to a person like Trump, who promises them that, says you can be like me, you can be a billionaire at some time too, that sort of thing. But I guess what I'm trying to say is at least they can buy, it's just a messed up thing when a billionaire looks more like a populist than Hillary Clinton does. Okay, like, she can't even bill herself as a populist because there's nothing populistic about her. There was nothing that like appeals to working class interests amongst it. At least Trump had the good sense to like lie about being a, like having working class interests. You know what I mean? Hillary Clinton couldn't even bring herself to lie about it. You know what I'm saying? She went at she was very, very snide and very condescending when she talked about base. She literally used the term basement dwellers. Like she could, when she referred to like, like she used every elitist trope you can possibly think of to alienate people who are economically below her. Like, I don't think she's capable of sympathizing with anyone who is economically below her. I think it's just beyond her capability to do it because she grew up in an extremely, blue blood WASP background. You know what I'm saying? There's just no other way of putting it.
there are no words of contempt that could
Yeah.
accurately describes how I feel about Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton both. And you've heard me over the years, me bitch and complain about the Democratic Leadership Council, and people who would meet me for the first time, they're like, "What the hell are you talking about, Democratic Leadership Council?" And I'll be like, "That DLC, that vessel with what Reaganized the Democratic Party in the 1990s, and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton used that organization to Reaganize the Democratic Party and create the sewer that the Democratic Party is." And I'm coming to grips with people like Bernie Sanders. I still respect Bernie Sanders and all of that, but I've been thinking about this past week that I really have to go and move beyond Bernie Sanders. I have to move beyond 2016 and 2020, and I have to not take him seriously if he runs again in 2024. I mean, I have to for my own mental well-being. I have to, because if he runs in 2024, it's going to be the same crap again.
I voted for Sanders twice. I did.
Me too.
I voted for him as many times as he came in, just because I thought that was the most sane, logical path to take. And since he was so close to within like arm's reach of like this whole thing. But the Democrats are really good at playing games. They're really good at the shell game thing, like 3-card Monty. They're really good at shell, the three-card Monty sort of thing, where like, now you see it, now you don't. Is it under this card? No, it's not under that card. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. They're really good at that sort of thing. Like they'll allow like a Bernie Sanders to come in to corral all the discontent, or like their base, so that they, and then at the last moment they'll sandbag them. They really just came together during the primaries to absolutely sandbag them. It was clearly obvious that all the other candidates were rallying behind Biden, when they saw that, that they weren't going to get what they're, that they were out of the race, or, what have you. Anyone remembers, Biden was the last one. He was far behind everybody else.
He was.
All of a sudden, bam! He was ahead of everybody else, because everyone else decided that they would rather see Biden, get in than than Sanders.
It was right there before my very eyes. I was so angry. I had the meltdowns I had 2.5 years ago. I mean, I was having some meltdowns over this, and again, for my mental well-being, I got to move beyond Bernie, because and there's a lot of people like me out there that have that are still hung up on this. And you know me, I mean, I almost had an admiration of Bernie, almost to a religious, devotional level. I mean, and that's wrong of me. That makes me no better than MAGAs that look at Donald Trump as a cult of personality, even though Bernie Sanders isn't one himself.
So. Yeah, it was really like I don't know. It's like, the thing is, it's that there are hardcore Democrats that don't care, that they'll just vote Democrat no matter what. But I think they really, really did incredible damage to any kind of popular base they might have, with what they pulled in 2016 and all that. I really do. I think they I don't know how they're gonna like be able to, like the only they're very tricky, though. They're very a tricky party, because like you see with Biden, like how now he's doing very begrudging, very mild forms of debt relief to students, very mild forms of like signing this infrastructure bill, all that's, this is how it runs with the Democrats, though. They just have a very like, they're very Machiavellian in how they do this. Very
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Another sneaky tactic that I've noticed is the National Labor Relations Board.
Yeah.
It's been a mild improvement. A mild improvement on the National Labor Relations Board. I would say, quote unquote, the best in decades. I mean, we're seeing, like, with Amazon and Starbucks. I think that Biden's puts these people in there that they're allowing just a little bit of unionization to take place to bring hope among the labor movement, but they don't want it to get so out of control. Because I was listening to Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball today, and I value pretty much what they have to say about a lot of things, but I think that they're delusional about that National Relations Board. I mean, I understand what they're getting at, but I think it's a trick by the Democrats.
Oh, that's all the Democrats do. They know exactly how to withhold. Like, they know how to, to just, like I said, they're very Machiavellian. They're very tricky. They know how to withhold a lot, and then when it's in their interest to give a little bit back, so that it's just enough that people are feel thankful. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And feel gratitude, because it's oh my God, we've been suffering for so long. Even a little bit, it's I think it was, what was it, that saying by Malcolm X, is that you're not my friend if you stab me in the back and then take out the knife just a little bit, pull the knife out just halfway. You know what I'm saying? Or I forgot exactly. I'm kind of
I get the
mangling.
analogy.
You get
Yeah.
the analogy. Is that's what the Democrats do. They shove a knife into your back, and then take it, don't take it all the way out. They just take it halfway out. You know what I'm saying? So and that's essentially what it is, and it's just, I don't know, I, as much as I can diagnose what the problem is, over the years I can't say anymore what the solution is. At one time when I was younger, I really felt like we were on the cusp of something great, a mass movement with the anti-globalization or counter-globalization movement, and then all of a sudden, bam, 9/11 happened, and it all fell apart. And I remember too that just before 9/11, they were planning on another massive demonstration in Washington D.C. and that in the previous April, I had been in Washington D.C. Against the IMF and World Bank. And it didn't go over as well as what it did in Seattle, where we shut down the entire city, and they had to call in martial law and all that shit. And you had 10,000 people, literally 10,000 people in the street. Union members, environmentalists, people from all over the world. It was amazing. Any rate, but after several different demonstrations, also one up in Canada in Quebec City against the free trade area of the Americas that never went through. This was going to be the next big thing, and they were talking about estimating 100,000 people were going to be in Washington D.C. And I thought, oh, this is it. This is going to be our moment. This is going to be where it will all gel. It will all come together. And a few weeks later, bam, 9/11 happened, and it was all over.
It was kind of an optimistic period because, I was very, very active too back then. And I mean, there were people, I kind of, believe it or not, kind of listening to the message of socialism at that time, and we were getting some notice. We were having local papers interviewing us, things of that nature, and so it was kind of an optimistic time, and it just, and things just kind of, as I said, with the 9/11 attack that took place, like you said, the emphasis became the anti-war movement. And then when Obama got elected, the anti-war movement died.
Yeah,
and then
anti-war movement was another one that had such potential. It's like, I hate using that word because everything freaking has potential in this country that amounts to absolute jack shit. So I'm sorry, but like but like yeah, I mean, because there were like there were thousands of people in the streets for the anti-war movement, and there was so much clapback against Bush. And it was like, but even at the time I felt like, oh god, we're backtracking now. We're going from what the main core issue is, which was the capitalist system, and now we're going to the symptom of the capitalist system, which is the war machine. And I felt like it was already a retreat from something. The anti-war movement, as incredible it was, I always felt was like a retreat from this kind of like a like it's like it was backtracking. It was like it was now we have to like fight against the war machine again, and accept what really creates the war machine, which is the capitalist system. And but even so, it was still, I don't want to disparage it. It was an amazing time. And then all of a sudden, after that all fell apart, like you said, under Obama, there wasn't anything until OWS, until Occupy Wall Street. And I felt like, oh my God, it's been like a decade now since anything like this, which is economically centered, not just against the war machine, which is an extension of that. And I was pretty optimistic about it at the time. And in a lot of ways, I don't think Sanders could have ever been as popular as he was if not for the Occupy Wall Street. I remember back then, Sanders was kind of like hopping on board it. I do remember during OWS, there was a lot of like references to Sanders and everything. Sanders was definitely like a part of that whole thing. And even just to go even to Occupy Wall Street, just to talk about that for just 1 second, with to dovetail it with somewhat with the MAGA communism, you did see people on board of the of OWS who were to the right. Not a lot. It was the same thing. It was similar to like with the anti-globalization movement, where you had some opportunistic far right elements that were in there trying to like co-opt it.
I remember seeing Alex Jones at Occupy Wall Street, and I was just like, here is a Tea Party guy, and he was coming in there supporting Occupy Wall Street, and I know he was doing it out of opportunism. The only good thing Alex Jones did regarding Occupy Wall Street was having to hear him defend socialists from being attacked by the police. That was kind of okay.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, like Alex Jones is a showman. I mean, he is. He's a showman. I mean, like,
I don't take him seriously.
I don't. Well, I don't. Like a lot of people do. Like on the left, think he's this like crypto fascist, and I guess in as much as anyone on the far right populism is, I guess you could say that. But I mean, I always thought him as just like kind of a showman. I mean, he was even out. I remember before people even knew much about, before he was even popular, he was kind of jumping on board the anti-globalization thing too, even back in the day. I remember that to a certain amount, like disinfo.com and everything. I don't know if you remember that, but like,
maybe.
Yeah, it was around the same time they were like, but of course it's always being framed exactly with the way the right frames is, like globalists versus nationalists and stuff like that, And,
With Alex Jones, I've always said someone like a Rush Limbaugh was always more dangerous than Alex Jones or Sean Hannity.
By far. Like Alex Jones is just kind of a clown, to be honest. He's not. And the constituency he has is like very marginal, at best. But like someone like a Rush Limbaugh, no, he appeals to the entire middle America thing. Of angry white males who are like, who are boomers, but never really were, or maybe at one time were hippies, but became like part of the the Reagan, or maybe even not. But the point being is that he definitely appealed to that kind of Nixonian silent masses sort of thing, far more than like Jones ever did. Jones, is just kind of like a, you know,
A showman.
yeah,
Yeah.
a showman. He's a
Yeah.
showman. I mean, like, and even he could appeal to like kind of some dissident left types. I don't know if you ever remember or ever was into Richard Linklater movies, and stuff like that. But he was in he's in one of his movies, a Scanner Darkly, like
I
Jones.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah, Jones had like a cameo appearance in a Scanner Darkly, and you know. Definitely he's more of the conspiratorial right, but in a very kind of like digestible, like pop way. I don't even know how to explain it really, but yeah, it's basically that. But yeah, no, you're right. Rush Limbaugh is far more was far more, because he had like real mainstream GOP support too. I mean, he wasn't marginal. He was the rallying cry of like the GOP during the 90s.
Yeah, and I would say that in relation to Trump, I would say that Ron DeSantis is more dangerous than Trump, because Trump provides a clown show in the same way that Alex Jones.
Yeah,
Ron DeSantis is a serious politician with a rhino Republican demeanor about him,
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's like the worst of George W. Bush, with the real and imagined shit that the Trump derangement syndrome liberals have of Trump is true about Ron DeSantis.
yeah. It is. It's true about, but he won't like inspire the same kind of animosity, because Trump is a clown. I mean, he was a vulgar clown who just knew how to press people's buttons. He's just the kind of really he was an extremely vulgar person, and he elicited a visceral kind of disgust because for that reason. At least amongst rational people, he elicited a vulgar, like, a kind of, like a visceral response, of just being like, of just disgust and everything like that. But like, I don't think DeSantis quite has that. I mean, a lot of people do know what kind of person DeSantis is, but I don't think he'll ever be as like unpopular of a large swath of the population as Trump was.
Yeah. So yeah, well, it's kind of well, with regard to Trump, I will talk about Kyle Kalinske one more time. He said on the show before the 2020 election, when Ben Shapiro was endorsing Trump in 2020, and he was a never Trumper in 2016, and he was stating why he decided to support Trump in 2020, Ben Shapiro. And it kind of summed it up. Kyle was like, everything that Ben Shapiro loves about Donald Trump is everything I absolutely hate about the guy. And everything that Ben Shapiro hates about Donald Trump are things I actually kind of like about the guy.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. They hated Trump for all the wrong reasons and loved him for all the wrong reasons too.
Yeah.
I mean, look, they everyone finally got on board Trump because they saw what kind of constituency he could like rally. Even as much as you had half the country hating him, you had half the country loving him, who were like just willing to do anything for the man. You know what I'm saying?
Cult of personality.
You could not, there's no Republican that I could think of besides, say, Nixon, who had that kind of polarizing, charisma, or maybe even Reagan. I don't know.
Well, at least with Nixon, as horrible as he was,
Yeah.
by today's standards, he'd be to the left of Biden, Obama,
Yeah,
and
I know.
Clinton on policy. That's
Well,
sad.
well, that's the thing. I remember that meme I posted, which showed like where it had like classic Reagan, then it had
Mm-hmm.
cool Reagan, that's Clinton, and then
I forwarded it too.
yeah, like stupid Reagan is like was George Bush Jr. The point being is that it's similar to with FDR. After FDR, say up to like maybe uh, Carter, who was kind of actually on like the border. He was kind of like a kind of interregionum, I guess you could say, between two different, eras. But everyone after FDR had FDR's politics in some way or another, even on the right. It set the Overton window economically to the left. You couldn't really not do FDR, like economic, populism and get elected. You couldn't go against it and get elected. So everyone was some form of FDR up until Nixon, who took it apart. Nixon was the one who really was the last one, and he took it apart. He took apart all the things that made it possible, because we were at a different point at that time with like the shift in our economy. I won't go into it completely, but we were able to enact so much New Deal stuff because the U.S. was so economically strong after World War II, and it made that kind of economic populism possible, and after our debacles in Southeast Asia, it no longer really was. And plus, we had all the competition from a newly rebuilt Japan and Europe. So we no longer had the luxury, and Nixon knew it. I mean, yes, he was still an FDR, New Dealer in the way, social programs that he would have put forward. But the fact of the matter is that even he saw which way it was going, and he started taking it apart, like with the Bretton Woods and everything like that, and taking us off the gold standard, and all that sort of stuff, and the beginnings of outsourcing, and stuff like that. And globalization started just after Nixon got in, and you could say that Carter was kind of right on the border. He's kind of right on
deregulation, things like that.
Yeah, he was right on the border between the old FDR model and what would become the new Reagan model, and it was already beginning at that point. I mean, he had the Trilateral Commission, for Christ's sakes, the very roots of like the beginning of this kind of globalization, thing of like, and so many businesses were shutting down and going over cross seas, even under Carter, So it's like all that was being ramped up at that point, even though, he still was very much the idea of extending social programs. It's just that, it was still, the thing is that Reagan hadn't got in yet. As soon as Reagan got in, he changed everything. He cemented the entire tendency of the post-Nixon, new global order of monetization and the disassembling of the welfare state and destroying unions. They just ramped it all up to insane degrees, and using debt in the place of like public spending. So like so yeah, so basically just that, yeah. I don't remember where I was going at.
No, that's okay. Well, it's funny. For me, even as probably as recent as maybe a decade ago, when I was defining my socialism, and there's no one size fit all, but at one time I would say, well, if we go and expand unions and we have single payer health care and we can have a few more social programs and be kind of like Sweden, Norway, that'll be a good start. And I'm still for those things. but I've turned significantly more anti-capitalist since then. And I mean, this neoliberalism is just it's destroying the environment. Is creating war and it's causing civil unrest in this country.
It's cancer. It's cancer. It's pure cancerous. It's been going on now since the 70s. It started in the 70s, and it rose up in the 80s, and it was cemented in the 90s under Clinton and what have you. And you know, in the post-Soviet era. And yeah, no, I mean, it's literally destroying our environment. It's jeopardizing the human species, you know, the future of the human species on the planet, and thousands of other species by extension, millions maybe even. And you know, I mean, what it's something yeah, there's almost no half measure as you see it now. Even the social democrats have to roll back over in Europe a lot of their stuff, you know. And you know, a lot of their programs. I mean, granted, over in Europe it's different. It's when this anytime the social democrats try to pull that, you know, like you know, you have mass uprisings in the way that we don't have mass uprisings over here.
Yeah.
You know. And so
We need a yellow vest movement here, and
yeah,
we don't have it.
yeah, yeah. And even the far right over there is very much is very much about like social programs too and stuff like that. But um yeah, right, exactly. They just they do not put up with it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, even though like the masses don't put up with it there, the fact of the matter is that in order to do international business, they have to do it to a certain degree, because that's the new world order. You know, is driving down production and opening up you know, like commercial borders and everything like that. Driving down the cost of labor and opening up you know, markets, you know, across borders.
Strangely enough, with Brexit in 2016,
Yeah.
and some people were surprised my position on Brexit. Some weren't.
Yeah.
I was and with Brexit. I would have probably voted for Brexit in the UK only on the premise that I don't want the British government to take orders from Brussels as far as dictating on how much the government can spend on social services, on the national health, on curbing unions in the country, things of that nature. And in that regard, and the one good thing that came out of this, even though Jeremy Corbyn unfortunately did not become prime minister,
Yeah.
and I was a big supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, and fuck everybody who smeared the hell out of him. Fuck all the people who smeared him and made all these horrible allegations about him that were not true.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a decent man. Probably to my left, but he was still a decent man. I believed in him
He
to the level of Bernie.
Yeah, he shared the same fate as Sanders over here.
Yeah, better Bernie. He's a better Bernie.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah. And think about it is, he kind of when in I guess it was 2017 or it was one election where they did very well under his leadership and with the parliament, and it scared the hell out of the Tories that Boris Johnson kind of beefed up the welfare state and public spending to kind of bribe the British public into voting, where he kind of was not the shittiest prime minister you can imagine. And now they got this Karen, Liz Truss, who is not just a European central rightist. She's trying to copy America style right-wing politics, and she's actually to the right of Margaret Thatcher, it seems like.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's just it. It's like the I think speaking of Margaret Thatcher, she said it kind of like succinctly when she said like Tina, right?
Alternative.
There is no alternative. I mean, that's what they originally like the anti-globalization movement was like about was like pushing back against the whole Tina thing with another world is possible. The idea that there is another world possible. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be, like we can make it better than actually existing socialism. We can make it even better than it was, back then, and we don't have to cave to capitalism and capitalistic demands. Um, and the thing is I really and truly believe that at that point, and I guess I still do now. It's just that how that will come about, like how like there will be what will be the next way of organizing it all, bringing it all together, and under how and what banner. I don't know. I cannot say. I cannot say.
As I said other day to the person that I interviewed yesterday, Friday morning, I was previous person I was interviewing. The left needs to go back to the drawing board and see what to do and everything. I want to talk about Caleb Maupin for a moment because you knew him.
Yeah, very, very briefly. I was in Occupy Wall Street. This was before he was an internet celebrity. I do believe he was, if I remember correctly, he might have been like a correspondent with Telesur at that point. I'm not. I don't. I know he wasn't with RT at that point, but I think he was with Telesur at that point. If I remember, it was 2011, 2012 at that. Yeah, it was back when I was at Occupy Wall Street, at Zuccotti Park and all that. And yeah, he was not really the Caleb that I know as like I wasn't introduced to him as an internet celebrity. I was just introduced to him as this very like he had like a lot of energy, and he had this like a lot of energy and like enthusiasm on a grassroots level. He definitely was like he would organize. He seemed to be like open to organizing with anybody. He was with the Workers' World Party at the time. I remember that. And in fact, I remember I hung out with him a handful of times there and talked to him quite a bit. I remember him. He had the goatee and the long hair.
Carrot top.
Yeah, he did not. He didn't. He was nothing slick about his image like as of now. He was much different. Much more like just like a street activist. And I remember, yes, he was working with the Workers' World Party, kind of, Marxist Leninist organization. And I remember him bringing me to their old like library they had. I forgot exactly where it was located, exactly in New York City, but it was this real musty old library with these books that probably were about 40 years old. I don't know, but they were like, but it was like. I remember him showing me that, and he was he I don't know, he just was different than he is now. Back then, he just seemed much more like a street activist who was open to working with many different types of people. Whereas now, from what well, he's been on my friends list because I knew him at that time, so he definitely friended me on Facebook and all after that. And I saw it kind of evolve as with his like like the posts he was making at that over the years. And he definitely changed around once 2016 and all that happened and everything. It seemed like he became less about street activism and more about a kind of like organized movement, that what it became, what was it, CPI or whatever.
UPI. Yep.
Yeah, and he was actually kind of he kind of changed at that point. He seemed to be like actually like I remember him, having these very disparaging posts on Facebook about street activism. He very much denounced Antifa, because his idea was that he wanted to uh, uh, thought it was much better tool to debate them rather than to deplatform them and stuff like that. And you know, I have mixed feelings about that. I do think there's a place for debate between right and left, but some right is just too far right that there's no reason that you should ever have to debate them, especially if they're out there in the streets, calling for, what do you call it, ethnic cleansing or whatever, and you know what I'm saying.
Right.
I don't believe it. There are definitely some things I don't really care to debate. There's no debating it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I can understand some people on the conservatives, maybe paleo conservatives, what have you, that you can debate them and stuff. But people who are out and out, crypto Nazis, I'm not freaking debating them. You know what I'm saying? But
Uh,
they should definitely be, if it's, they should not be allowed a platform in universities and stuff like that, as far as I'm concerned. But and I do support Antifa and what have you. But yeah, no, he
Me
did
too.
he did seem to change somewhat, over from what I remember him as, when I was at Occupy Wall Street, from him being this very kind of rough and ragged and exuberant, street activist, to more slick figure who is a head of an organization. And he seems kind of just regular Marxist Leninist too when I first met him. I didn't see him as being too different, too much deviating from that. But over time, he did seem to become more about this kind of, what was it, patriotic
Oh,
social,
gosh, yes. Yeah.
or what. And I didn't even know that's what they called it. I just know that I saw him start saying things like, "Oh yeah, I'm more in the tradition of Huey Long, or Lyndon LaRouche, or what have you." And I'm like, I don't know about that. Those are not exact. I mean, yeah, Huey Long was great and all, in that he drove out the Klan from Louisiana politics, and he did a lot of different things that were good. But on the other hand, he was always a sort of a New Deal populist, who was an alternative from the communist, that were organizing at the time amongst workers. So I don't know, if he's necessarily, if you consider yourself a communist, that you would necessarily consider yourself a long, Huey Longite, or whatever you want to call it, because he was still very much in the same kind of New Deal sort of populism. He was not, at any point was he communist, and I think in fact he was sort of against communists, or as a alternative to that, but yeah, no, I did see, with his, with Mopen, Caleb, that he was that he was changing somewhat from from a kind of orthodox Marxist Leninist to a little bit more this sort of appealing to what I guess you could call third positionism, which does
Hmm.
overlap with a lot of some far right elements, like you see with Dugan and stuff like that. You know, uh, with his anti-liberalism. The thing is, you got to be careful with anti-liberalism. Yes, you can critique liberalism, but a lot of obviously fascists are opposed to liberalism, as well as the communists. So it's but for radically different reasons, and the reason, I always have to say, what's the reason that you're opposing liberalism? Is it because that it enables capitalism, or because you hate minorities and gay people? Because they're two very different reasons for opposing it.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you about letting me know about Caleb Maupin's. When I found out about it, when you told me about it, yeah, all this crap came out about it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah,
just learned about that recently. Actually,
yeah.
I didn't even know about it until
And
recently.
prior to that, I mean, prior to that, like you said, he seemed like a standard Marxist Leninist and everything, and in spite of that, in spite of my personal politics, I would listen to him, and he'll be like a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge. I'll be listening to him. He's interesting, and I'll listen to him, and from a historical perspective, and I mean, he paints a very vivid picture, and I mean, as I said, I mean, in spite of being a social democrat, I mean, kind of makes the whole communism thing. I mean, he actually kind of made it really, really appealing in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm just and I first heard of him a decade ago when he did a forum in on trying to basically debunk what the right wing have been saying about fascism and the left. Like Hitler and Mussolini were leftists, and he's basically shot a lot of holes in that theory and saying why right wing people are full of shit when they go around and claiming Hitler and Mussolini and National Socialism and fascism were all left wing ideologies. And he actually articulated those positions well. But with this Dugan, Alexander Dugan thing, that did not sit well with me, and the whole patriotic socialism thing, and then now with this whole MAGA communism thing that's kind of coming out and everything, it just it's a slippery slope whether that's the intention or not.
Yeah, yeah. That's just what I'm saying. It seemed like very muddled ideologically over time. I didn't know what really after a while to make of it, to be honest. Like I said, I just was going on by what I saw on my feed, on Facebook when it's posts and everything. And it just seemed to me it was becoming a very sort of like just muddled, I guess is the best way to put it. I didn't know exactly where he was coming from with a lot of these things. It seemed like he was taking a little bit of from here and a little bit from there, and it was a mixed bag of things that I just was not really all that uh, you know good about. I can understand the whole patriotic socialism thing if you're just trying to appeal. You're trying to appeal to working class people to get them on board. I get that, but at the same time, you know, um, like you have to be like very careful about that too, because like you have to like uh, uh, you can't let in any way like a kind of national chauvinism like creep in, as a result of that either. Um, and he just I don't know. I don't know what to make of a lot of it. Yes, and the whole thing with Dugan and his I mean Dugan and the whole national Bolshevism thing, and that's all. That's I see that as I I it's another post-communist sort of like third positionist thing, which once again is a lot of like has a lot of fascistic elements to it. I mean, you can't be. I'm not saying he's a fascist. I don't think he is even to this day. I don't think he's a fascist. I think he's still a socialist and very much believes in socialism. I just think that he really doesn't have a coherent, political platform ideology. I think it's there's that, but the thing is that just to get back to what you were alluding to before, the thing that really that I the thing that I have the most problem with him now is reading these allegations from CPI that many people have stepped forward, mostly women, some men, about these like not just strong arming tactics, but like the entire like sexual harassment. Even more damning was this one young woman who who lost her job because of her aiding the organization, and he basically just left her high and dry to have to rely on, sex work,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
even became one of her clients too. I mean, look, I thought he was a good guy back then, and I can't really talk on what may have happened to him over time, or if this was just something that, like, that maybe the power went to his head or something like that. You see it happen. The saying is, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, it may sound like a cliche or a truism or what have you, but it's the truth. A lot of people get into like positions of power and then think they're untouchable, and they think anything they do is all right as an ends to a means. You know what I mean? A means to an ends, rather. So I don't know. I don't want to get into it too much because, these still are allegations and everything like that. Although the way I've read them written down, they are way too involved and way too detailed to be like, for me to think that it's just a smear campaign. You know what I mean? If it's way too detailed to be a smear campaign as far as I'm concerned. So he just, that kind of definitely like is something that I had my biggest problem right now with his thing. And as a result, I went to his wall, on his Facebook page, and it hasn't been active for a month now. Like for 4 weeks it hasn't been active. He hasn't posted anything. Obviously this is a pretty big deal. You know what I mean? If he was like rejected from his own organization, the CPI, like he literally was expelled from his own organization, and all these people came forward. So I don't know. I guess stay tuned to see what's going to come of that. Probably nothing good, but
Well, I think that it sounds like he might be taking a break and probably kind of rethinking things. And again, I'm not even accusing. I mean, I wasn't there and all of that. And as I said, I kind of, the thing about it is, as to say, he has kind of a likable demeanor, and and he doesn't seem like the kind of person that would do what he's been accused of. So that's what makes it kind of perplexing there.
although I gotta say, like, what do you call it? There, he does have this cult of personality thing about him. It really does. People definitely. It's either you love him or you hate him. I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other. I just thought that he was like becoming very muddled in his politics, and and kind of straying from what you would consider like communism. Like the core principles of it. I don't know, but when you do get this cult of personality thing, and like once again it goes, a lot of times it goes to your head. You become very controlling, you become everything about yourself, and whatever you do is the right thing to do. It does not facilitate self-criticism to be in a position where everyone's kissing your ass. Okay. It really does not. It only reinforces the idea that that anything you say or do is going to be brilliant and right, and no matter what, it's minor if you do things that are wrong, ethically or morally. So I don't know. I can't really say if all these allegations are true or not. The things that I read from the people directly, they sounded way too detailed to me to sound like they were just made up. To be honest, they sounded very authentic to me, but I don't know. I'll just leave it there because I don't know what else to say about it. I did know him for a short amount of time back during Occupy Wall Street. He seemed like a good person back then, but people, you just never know. You just never know. People can go from being like having the best of intentions to being like, narcissistic very easily.
Absolutely, yeah. It happens in the political discourse, kind of like across the political spectrum. Yeah, yeah.
Nothing like there's nothing sectarian about like becoming like an egomaniac.
No, not at all, not at all. As I said, Yeah, just I think yes, and some people would try to link this as an ideology flaw for political reasons, and no, this is just something that's human nature, whether it's politics or religion or any other,
Yeah.
any other thing in our society. So
Yeah. Hierarchy, definitely. It's that kind of
yeah, hierarchy, great word. Yeah,
authority. The
yeah.
authority it bestows on some people as being beyond, like scrutiny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So, is there anything else you like to talk about, or?
I'm trying to think if anything like if there's any last few words here. I like to get in about what's going on and everything. I just think that right now we are at a pretty fertile time for dissent because of like um, uh, the way the economy is just like collapsing in on itself, and so much dissatisfaction and people losing jobs, and well, people losing their houses, and rent and everything. We do have the possibility to do it. It's just, once again, the left has to get over its fractured infighting, I think, is the best way to put it, and try to start like rallying back up, because there's all the elements are there. We just need like an organized front for it. I don't know how that's going to happen, but that's what's necessary.
Well, that's why these conversations take place, to try to find out how to go about it. That's why I do this channel. I'm not having any grandiose delusions that this channel is going to spark what's going to happen, but I like to do my tiny little part to try to start these conversations to kind of lead toward, whether it happens or not, lead toward a better place.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my time on here. And
We have a chat line. Do you want to see? Let's see what. Let's talk to some of these people on the chat line real quick, and then I guess we'll just go ahead and sign off.
I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Hello, Justin and Willie, Snipe Hunter Master. He's greeting us. All right.
Hello.
And Kevin Toohey writes, if you don't know what MAGA communism is, it's probably because you never read the Substack about it when you, about it. Then why do you speak of it like a fool? You're just parenting your favorite fake left. No, I haven't read about it on Substack, but it's just what I've been hearing about it from all the proponents of it and the naysayers online. Let's see. 187 Al-Assad. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. MAGA communism is a thesis. Read the Substack about it. But why do you speak of like a fool, just printing your favorite fake left? I wrote that before. Let's see here. Hillary Clinton was the first American prominence to put foot to the neck of the Western world tolerance of reactionary Taliban rule for the use against Shia in Iran. Well, she's the reason why slavery is back in existence in Libya, and she's the reason. And I never ever thought the day would come where I would look at someone like Gaddafi as a force for good. He was actually a force for good. I mean, and I would have never thought of saying that 20 years ago. So, I mean, it was the only country in the African continent that had universal health care, and it was a functional society with and now it everything is gone because what Hillary Clinton did as Secretary of State.
Let's not forget Iraq either, and her involvement.
Well, that's more of a Bush Cheney thing, although she did vote for the Iraq War.
She was no small amount of complicity in that, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just like really angry at Hillary Clinton, a lot. So let's see. What does Willie think about Sanders playing the defense for the autocrats? One of the reasons why I'm having a very sobering attitude toward Bernie these days.
Which autocrats? I'm not sure what's.
I think he's talking about. Talking about bending the knee down toward the Democratic establishment.
Although it's okay. I thought I wasn't sure if they were trying to imply that he was like what do you call it, like foreign ones, like saying like in Venezuela or something like that, or I didn't know if that's what they meant by autocrats.
Yeah, his position these days is not that great on Venezuela, but just
Yeah.
yeah. Let's see here. She ran on a higher minimum wage for one. What the fuck? She has to work for women in Afghanistan. Uh, I know that Afghanistan was it would have been better off if they would have let the Soviets win. I even said that back in my more revisionist days when when you knew me in my more revisionist mindset days. She ran a no-fly zone over. We know about that. Let's see here. I am anti-war. You see, I am for anti-war, but under Trump there was not a new war. But I
know.
But under Biden, look at what happened. It's a big hill, and I don't know when we can save it until we get yonder indeed or right wing. I'm sorry, Indy or right wing in office and government to know hard times. We need hard times to teach. The only reason there might have been a mild improvement, in my opinion, over foreign policy under Trump is not because Trump was great. I agree with Glenn Greenwald. There was a lot of dysfunctionality between the establishment, Bush people that were in the Trump administration, and Trump himself, and that chaos prevented, any further escalation. He still did some fucked up things foreign policy wise, but it could have been worse.
Yemen. I mean, let's not he absolutely escalated the war in Yemen. He provided arms for Ukraine conflict during that. I mean, he's not like, people really overstate him being the peace president, and
he wasn't, but
he wasn't. But I mean, yes, he didn't start a new war and stuff like that, but he definitely maintained and even kept things going in varying different places like Yemen, and now as what we see going on in Ukraine.
Yes. And it definitely murdering General Qasem Soleimani is a war crime. I mean, what he did, without a question. Without a question. I am more of a constitutional man, so I had to hate both sides. But our government, such as gun control, healthcare, taxes, foreign affairs, are going to be far. We need a large workforce, not lazy people. Right. Well, I mean, I think this person is conservative leaning, and that's okay. But this person chipping in the conversation. And as far as the constitutionality, one does not have to be on the right to support the Constitution. I say that socialistic measures can be added to the Constitution. I support an amendment for health care for all, like a National Health Service. Let's see. Autocrats who raise their own people feed the war machines. Isolation is trash.
Who's isolated?
I don't get that. Well,
the fact of the matter is you don't have to go in there and bomb them back to the Stone Age. I mean, I'd rather be called isolationist than a war criminal. First of all,
me too.
First thing, I'd rather be called an isolationist than a war. But I'm not even an isolationist. You can absolutely use diplomacy. You can absolutely use diplomacy to de-escalate these conflicts. They're not reason for these conflicts aren't beyond rational reasons. There's obvious reasons that you can quell both sides. you can you know, you don't have to, you know, you don't have to be an isolationist. It's such a ridiculous uh uh you know, like you know, like false dichotomy between being isolationist and interventionist. It's, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself a dub, and I, you know, if isolationists could keep us out of wars abroad, I mean, good. I mean, I don't care what it's called if people are not dying. Let's see. DeSantis would crumble. What would he do when 11 starts to rattle over? Oh, okay. I get it. Zai starts it to saber rattle over Taiwan Strait. I know what I'll do. Not get involved. Let's see. And Artie writes, my man. And okay, so that's pretty much everybody here. So anyway, Justin, I appreciate this. It's been a great we finally talked on YouTube in person, and I think we've known each other what, like 11, 12 years now online.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So, and you know, whether we're talking on Facebook, in these various chat groups, or on the bulletins, or here or whatever, it's always learn something from you. So, I always appreciate it.
Yeah, Sam, and I'm glad to talk to you, man. Glad I was able to be a part.
All right. Oh, one question before we go. I'm planning to go to Action for Assange on October the 8th in Washington. Like there's like a 90% chance I'm going to be there. Are you planning to go?
I live in Michigan these days and work all the time. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go. If I was still on the East Coast, that might have been if I was still in New York, it would be a possibility. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to. I would love to, though. That'd be fantastic. Oh my gosh. You know, because what's going on, you know, like he's just like definitely go for it, man. If I can't make it, you definitely have to go.
Oh no, I'm planning to go. I mean, I haven't been to a protest in years. I happen to be on vacation that week, and it's just perfect. I was like, I haven't been to a protest in years. Damn it, I support Julian Assange, so always have. So let me go to DC. So
yeah, keep me updated on that. I want to hear about it.
Okay, yeah, I'll probably I bought a new phone the other day because it was crack all the hell and everything. So I should be doing a little bit of filming too, if I can out there and everything. So if I'm out there, what's this 90% chance. So all right. So listen, you have a great night, all right?
Okay, thank you, man. You too.
All right, take care. Anytime. Everybody, y'all have a great day.